But look, thank you so much for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here again. I'd echo the acknowledgements to my parliamentary colleagues, state and federal, my good friend Jim Ahmedi, other councillors, the consul, and also Dr. Gupta, Vasan, Srini and others. There's so many leaders in the Australian Indian community. There's one other acknowledgement as well that I want to make, and that is to the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, the Wurundjeri people, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I'm here, as was said, on behalf of Bill Shorten, the Leader of the Opposition and Federal Labor. Alan and I are from different sides of the Parliament. We actually get along very well and work together quietly, never in public, just quietly. But I'm also here as the proud representative of Australia's most multicultural electorate. And so with both of those hats, I wish you happy 70th Independence Day anniversary. It is 70 years since Nehru's Tryst with Destiny speech. And of course, the birth of modern India was not easy. There was conflict, it wasn't all peaceful, but it was momentous for India and the world that this giant was liberated from British rule and achieved independence again. It's also an inspiration for us. You've heard me say before, many in this room, that the 3 C's of Commonwealth curry and cricket that we share between Australia and India, but the deeper things, and I think the more important things of being multicultural nations. Again, not every day is easy being a multicultural, multi-faith nation, but it is important that we can learn from each other, democracy and the rule of law. India's importance, as Alan touched on, is growing in the world, and the power in the world is returning to Asia faster than at any time in human history, and that's both economic power and strategic power, and Australia is so well located to be part of that. But as a large and vibrant democracy, demography, unlike some other countries in the region, is absolutely on India's side, and I'm confident that the next few decades will see India continue to grow and prosper. We heard in the introduction the satellite had been launched, and someone at our table said, yes, that's because it was built by women. So there you go. Look, the final couple of things I'd say, when I was having a quick look again through the history, I think this is the 70th anniversary. It's also the 50th anniversary, just a few weeks ago, of the 1967 referendum in Australia to recognise the Aboriginal people in the Constitution. And I think reflecting on events such as the birth of modern India remind us that momentous change can happen and that big change is possible in a society when people come together. Whilst it took India actually, when they achieved independence, George VI was still the head of state. But I congratulate India for dealing with that a lot quicker than we have in Australia, and I do hope, speaking of momentous change, that we can learn from your example in the next few years and both change our constitution to have our own head of state like India and recognise the Aboriginal people. But I will close by also saying thank you to people in this room, to your families, to your networks and friends, for your contribution to modern Australia. If we are to prosper in the coming decades in Australia, your cultural knowledge, your skills, your languages, your connections, your way of thinking is what will make that happen as we find our way in Asia for business, education and so on. You're such a proud part of multicultural Australia, and I'm sure I speak for Alan when I say that we may have our differences in the Parliament, but what we saw on Thursday with that disgraceful stunt from Senator Hanson, I'm embarrassed to have to call her Senator, is not modern Australia, it's not multicultural Australia, it's not what we stand for, and I thank you for having me with you tonight so we can celebrate this important moment, both as multicultural Australians and also people of proud Indian heritage. Thank you and have a good night.